Wizz Air is facing a crisis. Once celebrated as one of Europe's fastest-growing budget airlines, the Hungarian carrier is now struggling with empty seats, plummeting passenger confidence and a reputation in freefall. Flights that used to sell out are now departing half-empty. Customer satisfaction ratings have collapsed. And across social media, frustrated travelers are sharing horror stories about cancellations, delays, and feeling nickel and dimed at every step. This isn't just a rough patch. Something fundamental is broken in Wizz Air's business model, and the cracks are showing everywhere. Wizz Air launched in 2003 with a simple promise: ultra-low fares connecting Central and Eastern Europe to destinations across the continent. For years, that strategy worked brilliantly. The airline expanded aggressively, adding new routes, opening bases in countries like Poland, Romania, and Hungary, and capitalizing on underserved markets where legacy carriers charged premium prices. By 2019, Wizz Air was carrying over 40 million passengers annually and had become the largest low-cost carrier in Central and Eastern Europe. The airline's bright purple planes became synonymous with affordable travel, and its growth trajectory seemed unstoppable. But then COVID-19 hit, and like every airline, Wizz Air had to adapt. What's interesting is that while other budget carriers scaled back and consolidated, Wizz Air doubled down on expansion. The airline added new aircraft, launched dozens of new routes, and pushed into markets across the Middle East and North Africa. Management believed they could capture market share while competitors were weak. On paper, it looked bold and strategic. In reality, it set the stage for a perfect storm of operational failures, customer dissatisfaction, and financial strain that would eventually catch up with them. Let's break down exactly what went wrong and why passengers are now avoiding Wizz Air in droves. At the heart of Wizz Air's current crisis is a problem the airline didn't create but couldn't escape: a massive shortage of aircraft. Wizz Air operates an all-Airbus fleet, relying heavily on the A320neo and A321neo models. These planes are fuel-efficient, cost-effective, and perfect for the budget airline model. But starting in 2023, a critical flaw in the Pratt & Whitney engines powering these aircraft forced hundreds of planes worldwide to be grounded for inspections and repairs. Wizz Air was hit particularly hard. By mid-2024, the airline had approximately 46 aircraft out of service, representing nearly 20% of its total fleet. The impact was immediate and devastating. With fewer planes available, Wizz Air was forced to cancel hundreds of flights. Routes that had been profitable suddenly became unsustainable. The airline scrambled to lease older, less efficient aircraft to fill the gaps, but that came with higher fuel costs and maintenance expenses. Load factors, the percentage of seats filled on each flight, began to drop. In the first quarter of 2024, Wizz Air's load factor fell to 82.6%, down from 87% the previous year. That might not sound dramatic, but in the razor-thin margin business of budget airlines, a 5-point drop is catastrophic. What made this worse was timing. Wizz Air had committed to an aggressive expansion plan before the engine issues surfaced. New routes had been announced, staff had been hired, and marketing campaigns had been launched. But without enough planes to service those routes reliably, the airline was stuck. They couldn't pull back without admitting failure, but they couldn't deliver the service they'd promised either. Passengers booked tickets expecting cheap, reliable flights and instead faced last-minute cancellations, long delays, and chaos at the gate. The aircraft shortage didn't just ground planes, it grounded passenger trust. If there's one complaint that dominates Wizz Air reviews right now, it's this: you can't trust them to actually fly you anywhere. Flight cancellations and delays have become so routine that passengers now book Wizz Air flights with backup plans in mind. According to data from aviation analytics firm Cirium, Wizz Air had one of the worst on-time performance records among European carriers in 2024. Only 63% of its flights arrived on time, compared to the European average of 75%. Cancellation rates also spiked, with thousands of flights scrapped throughout the year, often with little notice. The airline's response to these disruptions has been widely criticized. Passengers report being notified of cancellations just hours before departure, sometimes while already at the airport. Rebooking options are limited, often requiring travelers to wait days for the next available flight. And while EU regulations require airlines to compensate passengers for cancellations and significant delays, Wizz Air has been accused of making the claims process deliberately difficult. Travelers describe submitting forms multiple times, waiting months for responses, and ultimately giving up in frustration. One viral incident involved a family stranded in Bucharest after their flight to London was cancelled with no explanation. Wizz Air offered them a rebooking 3 days later, but refused to cover accommodation costs. The family ended up paying out of pocket for a hotel and meals, filing a compensation claim that took over 6 months to process. Stories like this are everywhere. On forums like Reddit and Trustpilot, you'll find hundreds of similar accounts from passengers who feel abandoned by the airline when things go wrong. What's particularly damaging is that these aren't isolated incidents. They're systematic. Wizz Air's operational reliability has deteriorated to the point where flying with them feels like a gamble. And in an industry where trust is everything, that's a reputation nearly impossible to recover from. Wizz Air has always been a budget airline, but in recent years the carrier has pushed its fee structure to an extreme that even veteran low-cost travelers find excessive. The base ticket price might look appealing, sometimes as low as 10 or 20 euros. But by the time you've added everything you actually need to fly, the total cost can rival or even exceed traditional airlines. This aggressive fee model has become one of the biggest sources of passenger frustration and a key reason why travelers are now avoiding the airline. Let's break down how it works. First, there's baggage. Wizz Air charges for everything beyond a small personal item that fits under the seat. A carry-on bag costs between 10 and 50 euros depending on when you add it, and checked luggage starts at 25 euros, but can go much higher. Want to pick your seat? That's another fee ranging from 5 to 40 euros depending on the seat location. Boarding priority, which lets you get on the plane earlier, costs extra. Even printing your boarding pass at the airport will cost you 10 euros. Then there are the more controversial charges. Wizz Air offers a service called Priority Boarding and Fast Track Security, which sounds helpful until you realize it's often necessary because the airline's own boarding process is chaotic. The airline also charges for basic things like paying with certain credit cards, and if you need to make any change to your booking, even a minor one, fees can easily exceed the original ticket price. What's more frustrating is that these fees are often buried in the booking process, appearing at checkout in ways that feel deliberately designed to catch travelers off guard. The result is a bait-and-switch experience. Passengers think they're getting a great deal only to discover the final price is significantly higher than advertised. And when compared to competitors like Ryanair or EasyJet, who also charge fees but with more transparency, Wizz Air increasingly feels like the worst value in budget travel. Beyond the hidden fees, Wizz Air has another problem. Base fares themselves are rising. The airline built its reputation on offering the cheapest flights in Europe, but that competitive advantage is disappearing. In 2024, average ticket prices across Wizz Air's network increased by approximately 15% compared to the previous year. While some of this reflects broader industry trends like higher fuel costs and inflation, Wizz Air's increases have been steeper than many competitors. For budget-conscious travelers who chose Wizz Air specifically because it was the cheapest option, this pricing shift is a deal-breaker. What's driving these fare increases? Part of it is the aircraft shortage mentioned earlier. With fewer planes available, Wizz Air has less capacity to offer, which naturally pushes prices up. The airline has also been dealing with higher operating costs. Leasing older aircraft to replace grounded planes is expensive. Fuel prices, while stabilized somewhat, remain elevated. Staff costs have increased due to labor shortages and unionization efforts across Europe. And the airline is still carrying debt from its aggressive pandemic-era expansion, which puts pressure on pricing. But here's the bigger issue. When Wizz Air raises prices, it loses its core value proposition. Budget travelers have always been willing to tolerate cramped seats, no-frills service, and inconvenient schedules because the savings were worth it. But if a Wizz Air ticket costs nearly the same as a flight on Lufthansa, KLM, or British Airways, why would anyone choose Wizz Air? Those legacy carriers offer better service, more reliable schedules, included baggage, and loyalty programs that actually provide value. This pricing problem is compounded by the fact that competitors are getting more aggressive. Ryanair continues to dominate the European low-cost market with lower fares and better operational performance. EasyJet has improved its customer service reputation while keeping prices competitive. Even traditional airlines are launching their own budget subsidiaries to compete directly. Wizz Air is stuck in the middle, too expensive to be a true budget option, but without the service quality to justify higher prices. If you scroll through reviews of Wizz Air on sites like Trustpilot, you'll notice a recurring theme: terrible customer service. The airline currently holds a rating of just 1.2 out of 5 stars based on thousands of reviews, with the majority of complaints focused on how the company treats passengers when problems arise. This isn't just about rude staff or slow responses, it's a fundamental breakdown in how Wizz Air handles customer issues, refunds, and complaints, and it's doing long-term damage to the brand. One of the most common complaints involves refunds. When Wizz Air cancels a flight, passengers are entitled under EU law to either a refund or a rebooking. But getting that refund from Wizz Air has become notoriously difficult. Passengers report waiting months, sometimes over a year, to receive money they're legally owed. The airline's customer service portal is clunky and often unresponsive. Phone lines are difficult to reach, with hold times stretching hours. Email responses are slow or generic, offering no real solutions. Many travelers end up having to escalate their claims to third-party services or threaten legal action just to get what they're entitled to. Another issue is communication. When flights are delayed or canceled, Wizz Air often provides little to no information about what's happening or what passengers should do next. Gate changes are announced at the last minute. Rebooking instructions are unclear. And staff at the airport, when available, are frequently overwhelmed and unable to help. This lack of transparency and support leaves passengers feeling abandoned, especially when they're stuck in unfamiliar cities with no clear path forward. What makes this particularly damaging is that customer service is one of the few areas where budget airlines can differentiate themselves. Ryanair, despite its reputation for fees, has actually improved its customer service in recent years and now handles complaints more efficiently. Wizz Air, by contrast, seems to have gone in the opposite direction, treating customer service as a cost to minimize rather than an investment in loyalty and reputation. Wizz Air isn't just dealing with internal problems. The competitive environment in European low-cost aviation has become significantly tougher, and the airline is losing ground to rivals who are executing better strategies. Ryanair, the continent's largest budget carrier, continues to dominate with lower fares, better punctuality, and a stronger financial position. In 2024, Ryanair carried over 180 million passengers, more than 4 times Wizz Air's total, and maintained load factors above 90%. The Irish carrier has also been more disciplined about expansion, focusing on profitability over growth for growth's sake. EasyJet, another major competitor, has taken a different approach by positioning itself as a slightly more premium budget option. The airline offers better customer service, more generous baggage policies, and partnerships with traditional carriers that make connecting flights easier. EasyJet's brand perception is significantly stronger than Wizz Air's, and travelers increasingly see it as a safer, more reliable choice, even if tickets cost a bit more. That perception gap is critical in an industry where brand loyalty is rare but brand avoidance is common. Beyond the established players, new competition is emerging. Emerging airlines and regional carriers are expanding into markets Wizz Air once dominated in Central and Eastern Europe. National carriers like LOT Polish Airlines and Tarom have modernized their fleets and become more price competitive. Even legacy giants like Lufthansa have launched budget subsidiaries to capture the low-cost segment without diluting their premium brands. The result is a crowded market where Wizz Air no longer stands out. What's interesting is that Wizz Air's management has acknowledged these challenges but hasn't adapted effectively. The airline continues to prioritize rapid expansion, announcing new routes and bases even as existing operations struggle. This growth-at-all-costs mentality worked when Wizz Air had operational excellence and a clear cost advantage. But now, with reliability issues, higher fares, and damaged customer trust, that strategy is backfiring. The airline is spreading itself thin, competing in too many markets without the resources or reputation to win. All of these operational and reputational problems are showing up in Wizz Air's financial results, and investors are taking notice. In the fiscal year ending March 2024, Wizz Air reported a net loss of €535 million, a significant deterioration from the previous year. Revenue per passenger declined as load factors dropped and pricing power weakened. The airline's stock price has fallen sharply, losing more than 60% of its value since early 2023. Analysts have downgraded the company's outlook, citing concerns about profitability, operational execution, and competitive positioning. The airline's debt load is another concern. Wizz Air expanded aggressively during the pandemic, taking on significant borrowing to finance new aircraft and route launches. While this leverage was manageable when the airline was growing rapidly and generating strong cash flow, it's become a burden as profitability has collapsed. Interest payments are eating into operating margins, and the airline has less financial flexibility to weather shocks or invest in improvements. Credit rating agencies have flagged Wizz Air's balance sheet as a risk, which could make future borrowing more expensive. Management has attempted to reassure investors by announcing cost-cutting measures, including workforce reductions and route consolidations. The airline has also slowed its growth plans, deferring some aircraft deliveries and closing underperforming bases. But these moves, while necessary, haven't restored confidence. The fundamental problem remains. Wizz Air's business model is under stress, and it's unclear whether the airline can return to profitability without a major strategic overhaul. Market sentiment has turned decidedly negative. Industry analysts now question whether Wizz Air can compete effectively in a post-pandemic environment where operational reliability and customer satisfaction matter more than ever. Some have speculated about potential mergers or acquisitions, suggesting Wizz Air might need a larger partner to survive. Others believe the airline can recover if it refocuses on core markets and improves execution. But right now, the financial picture is bleak, and time is running out. This is a pivotal moment for Wizz Air. The airline is facing a perfect storm of operational failures, customer dissatisfaction, rising costs, and intensifying competition. Empty seats are the most visible symptom, but the underlying disease is deeper. A business model that prioritized growth over reliability, cost-cutting over customer service, and short-term expansion over long-term sustainability. The question now is whether Wizz Air can reverse course before it's too late. Recovery is possible, but it won't be easy. The airline needs to stabilize operations first. That means addressing the aircraft shortage by securing reliable planes, even if it costs more in the short term. It means investing in systems and staff to reduce cancellations and delays, and it means rebuilding trust with passengers by improving communication, making refunds easier, and treating customers like people rather than revenue units. These changes require money, which the airline doesn't have much of right, now creating a difficult catch-22. Wizz Air also needs to rethink its pricing and fee strategy. The current model, where passengers feel tricked by hidden charges and rising fares, is unsustainable. The airline should consider simplifying its pricing, offering more transparent packages, and competing on value rather than just appearing cheap. This would require a cultural shift within the company, prioritizing customer satisfaction over squeezing every last euro from passengers. I've flown Wizz Air multiple times over the years, and I can say from personal experience that when things go right, it's a perfectly adequate way to get from point A to point B. The planes are modern, the fares are low, and the routes connect cities that other airlines ignore. But when things go wrong, and they increasingly do, the experience becomes a nightmare. The lack of support, the difficulty getting refunds, and the feeling that the airline simply doesn't care about you as a customer is frustrating and ultimately drives people away. What do you think about Wizz Air? Have you flown with them recently? Do you think they can fix these problems and win back passengers, or is this the beginning of a long decline? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My friend who is a commercial pilot said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers. But I believe stories about airlines and the realities of modern travel like this deserve to be told. Help me show her that these videos matter. Please subscribe to the channel and let's keep these stories from being buried.